What shocks foreigners more about property in Montevideo is that they are not equipped with fridges or things like that there is no MLS, there is no inspections. Clients from the US are choosing Montevideo right now because of political stability. The best thing about living in Montevideo is the people, the Ramble, and the overall vibe. One thing I don't love about living in Montevideo, the sidewalks are broken a little bit, and dog poop. If I could live anywhere in Montevideo, I would choose Palermo, but I'm completely biased because I'm living there my whole life now.
Ignacio, you are a real estate agent working here in Montevideo. Can you give me a bit of an idea of your background?
I'm an architect by profession.
Okay.
I graduated in 2024. I was already doing real estate almost a year from that. I actually started while in university. I needed the flexible hours. I fell in love with the job and I find it so fulfilling and I just wanted to keep going. And I'm happy with it.
We're going to talk about both renting and buying, but let's talk about renting first. Tell us what types of property are most common on the market in Montevideo?
Most common on the market are 1 and 2 bedrooms. If you are thinking about new construction, it's going to be mostly 1 bedrooms because of the new construction laws and stuff. But the normal is 1, 2. There's also studio apartments, 3 bedrooms. The rare ones are 4 to 5 or more bedrooms. Those are like 1 in 1,000.
Mainly apartments, right?
Mainly apartments, especially in the most dense neighborhoods like Pocitos, Cordón, Punta, Carretas. That's mostly buildings. There are some houses still, but those are rare. Usually they go pretty fast, sometimes a little expensive.
What are the costs that are involved in renting?
2-part question.
Okay.
So you have the entrance cost, and then you have like your monthly cost to be living in the apartment.
Great.
Your entrance cost, you're going to have the insurance cost, the policy. You're going to have the real estate commission. You're going to have your first month of rent. And then you could have like a safety deposit that the insurance company might ask depending on your financial situation. The insurance policy is something you need to get in order to rent. Basically, what the insurance does is they insure the owner that they are going to get their rent every month. So basically, the insurance company does a financial study on your situation, like your monthly income, things like that, and say, okay, you, Karen, can rent up to this much. It usually is like 30% of your monthly income. In the case of foreigners, they need to get it with an insurance company. There are other type of insurance that they cannot get because they are not Uruguayan. But the insurance company does the study. They will tell you how much you can rent for. And sometimes what they ask is for a security deposit, like as collateral, because you cannot show enough proof of income or you are not longer working with the company you work in the States or in some other country when you get here. So they ask for that collateral to give you the insurance.
Okay, and how much does this added cost?
The policy itself, it's around 60 to 70% of the cost of 1 month of rent. That's an annual policy. You can do it in 1 payment or in 12. I always suggest to do it in 1 and forget about it. And then if you have to do the deposit, it depends also on your specific situation, but could be from 2 to 4 months of the rent.
So just to make sure that everybody has that clear, you have to pay a guarantee or a garantía, as it's called here, that's through in the insurance. And also that insurance provider actually puts a limit on the amount that you can rent.
Yeah, basically they do the study to make sure that you can pay it every month.
Okay.
And you also have money to live.
Wow. Alrighty, cool. Tell us about the monthly.
Well, the monthly cost, it's going to be, of course, the rent. You are going to have building fees or common expenses. Here are called gastos comunes.
Yeah.
You're also going to have the utilities. If you live in an apartment, you're going to have 1 tax called what I will call door tax. And if you live in a house, you have 2 taxes. Door tax and sanitation tax.
Okay, what are they called in Spanish? And we'll put it on the screen.
Tarifa de saneamiento y después tributo domiciliario. Tarifa de saneamiento in buildings is already included in the building fees.
In an apartment building?
Yeah. I could go a little bit on the building fees. They tend to change depending on what the building actually offers. If a building has a doorman and it has floor heating and it has a gym and a pool, there's a lot of things that could have. Mostly they don't, but an apartment in Pocitos is most likely going to have at least floor heating.
What kind of amount are we looking at?
Well, also depends on the size of the apartment itself, because if the floor heating, the cost will change depending on your footprint. But let's say at least $400 per month is going to be like the building fees for that kind of apartment with floor heating and a doorman.
Tell me about the neighborhoods that you recommend for foreigners specifically coming to Uruguay. To Montevideo, right? You're in Montevideo.
Well, it depends a little bit on the client. I have a few archetypes of clients. You have like the ones that greatly enjoy being in a cultural and art environment with a good nightlife. I recommend Ciudad Vieja. It does looks a little bit gritty at night. During the day, it has a lot of movement because there's a lot of offices and businesses. But after 6, it completely changes and
very quiet.
Yeah, has a more gritty look. I have all the clients that live in Ciudad Vieja are super happy. Yeah.
I'm not a client.
Not yet.
No, thank you.
One of the first recommendation is Pocitos and Punta Carretas. That's like the easy, straightforward option for a good, safe, full of services and bars, cafes, neighborhood that's close to the Rambla, close to parks, that has a pretty Uruguayan life.
One thing that I always say about Pocitos and Punta Carretas, it's kind of like if you're a foreigner, it's kind of the neighborhoods of least cultural change.
Yeah.
So you're going to feel like, oh, I'm in something that is kind of familiar to me.
Yes.
Whereas if you live in a place like the old city...
It could be, yeah. It's going to be
it's going to feel very different.
Yeah.
You're really in,
Yeah, it's going to be a little clash there. If you live in Pocitos and Punta Carretas, it's going to be like more...
Softer.
Yeah, beginner easy.
Easy for beginners, I like that. Yeah.
You also have Parque Rodó and Cordón South, which are also like great options for beginners.
But a bit more kind of Uruguayan.
It's more of a young energy and vibe. I have a lot of LGBTQ clients, and I have a little like lesbian cult in Cordón.
They are
they are like all in 2 blocks away from each other.
A lesbian cluster.
Yeah. And it's super funny because they choose those apartments like
because they like the area.
Yeah, they like the area and they like the apartments, and it's pretty funny because one couple lives like right in front of the other, like the building right in front,
and they didn't know each other.
No. And the other ones live like 1 block away, but they chose to be there. And I also like recommend because there's some LGBTQ bars nearby, and the area is great. But now they are obviously give them the phones to each other, and now they're friends.
Amazing. Can we get an idea of rental costs in a few of those neighborhoods? Like what you can get for the money?
For example, in Cordón, you could be thinking for a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, maybe 45 to 50 to be sure, between the rent and the building fees. So that would be $1,200 a month. In Pocitos and Punta Carretas, there's a little bit more expensive. You're looking more close to 1,500, maybe 2,000, to be sure. For a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, maybe 2 bathrooms. It always depends on what the client wants. Sometimes they obviously want like a super big apartment with 3 bedrooms, and those are a little bit more expensive. Also, sometimes they want furnished apartments. That's a little bit more expensive too because of the furnished.
Brilliant. So let's talk about buying. A foreigner comes to you, they want to buy a place in Montevideo. What should they be prepared for?
They have to be prepared, first of all, that there is no major listing system. All the listings are like in different websites or listing websites. You will have duplicate with different prices, conflicting information, and most of like a lot of the times the listings are no longer available. Doing the search could be like
By yourself.
by yourself. Is going to be a little bit of a nightmare sometimes.
It can be
it's
frustrating,
a nightmare
right?
for real estate agents because you have to be asking if the property is available because you don't know. More information that sometimes you see in one place that in another listing is not, it's contradictory. But apart from that, you also need to be aware that there's no inspections here. The inspector is not a thing here. It's not something that you can sign a reservation contract, send an inspector, and if it's like in horrible conditions or something like that, you could renegotiate the price or get out of the business at all. Here, after you sign the reservation contract, it's very hard to get out of the business. And there's obviously the down payment is like a fine if you want to do that.
But you can do an inspection. You could contract somebody
Yes.
to do the inspection beforehand,
Yes.
right? But it's not a requirement.
It's not a requirement. It's not mandatory. You could do a second visit with an architect, a constructor, or
absolutely.
someone that does know a lot about construction can tell if the apartment is in good condition or what it needs to be done. I actually have clients that wanted to do inspections, and I get an architect specialized in construction to do a report on the apartment, things like that.
Yeah.
So they can also feel safe to move forward.
Anything else to add?
Loans. Foreigners cannot get a loan here, so they have to buy all cash.
There are going to be a few people going,
Yeah, I mean,
listening.
I actually had clients ask, okay, where do I go to get a mortgage or something like that? You cannot get a mortgage. It's already hard sometimes to get the rental insurance. Imagine how hard it would be to get a mortgage.
Oh my God, yeah, that's a really good point,
Yeah.
actually. That is a very good point.
You could maybe get a mortgage like down the years when you became a citizen and you have proof of income in Uruguay, things like that. But
It's going to be building up that credit.
Yeah.
When you've got a client that wants to buy, what's the process?
Usually what I do is we sit down and start talking like the property that they like to move forward with, and start asking, okay, how do you want to do this? Do you want to make an offer? I would suggest making this offer and try to get the apartment for less than this. I know I never make any promises, but I always let me know what your max would be. How much would you go for this apartment? If it's more than that, we don't go for it. You always have like room for negotiation to get the price lower, like 99% of the time. Sometimes like that's the price, and if you don't want it, the owner says, okay, no. If you don't want it, go away. But there's an understanding that there's always like a little negotiation. Depends on the property, on how much the property has been listed, and also depends on the seller's necessity to sell, but you never know that. But you sit down, talk to them about how to move forward. And one thing that's different here is that we don't have like DocuSign where there's like a formal offer sign or anything like that then the seller can sign accepting or counter offering. Here's like all via the phone. I call the other realtor, hey, we want to make this offer because of this. And then we go like back and forth until we reach an agreement. Sometimes the negotiation, it's about the price, but also timelines. Sometimes some furniture that they want to stay in the apartment. Sometimes it's like, it's not the norm, but if you want to do a payment now and then pay the rest in payments.
In installments.
Yeah. Usually it's just agree on money, how much time you're giving the seller to move out, and furniture or some other kind of stuff that you want in the apartment itself. Those are like the normal things in a negotiation.
And how long does everything take?
Well, the negotiation takes maybe 2-3 days, depends obviously on each case. Then you need to sign a reservation contract. Usually between an agreement and the reservation contract, there's a week, maybe 2, that states this person is going to buy this apartment for this much money in this timeline from this person. Okay? A lot of things that a contract says that are legal stuff. If you're going to do a cash deal, could be as quick as 30 days, 45 days. Also depending on the seller's needs to move out, if they have a place or if the apartment is empty, could be very quick. Usually people from Uruguay that buys with mortgages, they need 90 days for the bank to do all the process and studies on the person and the property. So 90 days is not a weird thing to hear about for the reservation contract to last. And after everything is done, you just buy the property and now it's yours.
It's so different to the situation in my home country in the UK, for example, where people can actually, there's even a verb of like gazumping, where people come in, you think that the property is yours, and then somebody comes in and they give a higher bid, and suddenly it's not yours any longer and you've been gazumped. Like here, it's kind of almost like, like a gentle person's agreement, right? It's all very dignified.
Yeah.
To me, it feels like there's kind of like honor in there as well, funnily enough.
Yeah, I think it's a good understanding of the situation. Like everywhere, sometimes happen. I wouldn't say it's like something that's normal, but occasionally sometimes happen. The seller gets a much higher offer than you did, and you lost. But there is some sort of gentleman's agreement that, okay, we have an agreement. I already gave my word to you, so I'm going to move forward with you, and I don't show the property anymore, or I don't hear any more offers. I work in Remax. We do have a safe system to a little reservation deposit to actually take the listing out of the market. It's no longer listed, and we don't have any more visits to the property, and we don't hear any more offers. To have a little bit more
security
for both parties. So the seller
you can
knows.
you can relax about.
Yeah.
What's the buying market like in Montevideo at the moment?
For starters, it's much slower than the US. And
in general,
and it's not seasonal. There is a little stop during our summer in December, January, because everyone is on vacation. But after that, the real estate market takes space again. Let's say 3-bedroom, 2 or 3 bathrooms in Pocitos, Carretas. It could change, but maybe 350 to 400 is a good budget.
US dollars.
Yes. It depends, because some clients recently signed a reservation contract for something that's lower than that. And it's a nice apartment. So it varies a little bit, depending how big the apartment is, if there's balconies.
Yeah, we're just trying to give people an idea.
Yeah, but around that price, from 3 to 400, you should be okay.
Let's look at another neighborhood, some of the ones that you've mentioned, for example.
Let's say Cordón, which is the second most dense neighborhood in Montevideo, population-wise. You are maybe looking at between 200 to 270 for a overall good apartment.
3 bedrooms, we're saying.
3 bedrooms,
2
yeah.
bathrooms.
Yeah.
Okay.
Always. It depends.
Yeah.
But with that budget, you should be in a good range.
Yeah. I just had a client the other day, very concerned, because he said, I'm looking at listings online and everywhere is so small.
Yes.
It's not the square footage that I'm used to.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering, for clients like that, I mean, I know that you've had them because I know some of them myself. They choose different neighborhoods, right?
Yes. One thing that especially American clients should be prepared is that our apartments are much smaller, especially bedrooms. They are very surprised with the bedrooms. Here is a place for the bed, a wardrobe, and that's it. Obviously, there are apartments that are super big with beautiful big bedrooms that you could have a dance inside of the bedroom. But if you are looking maybe for those type of apartments, Centro or Old City could be a good option in a reasonable price. Actually have some clients that bought an apartment year and a half ago in Centro, in a beautiful apartment in a historical building. And they say this apartment, I don't know, in New York was going to be $3 million, something like that.
We're talking about the same people, I
Yeah,
assume.
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And so what they wanted was beautiful architecture.
Yeah.
What year was it? 1950s?
Yeah, 1950s, I think.
And how many square foot is that apartment? Do you remember? It's massive.
Yeah, it's massive, but it's
Right.
like 3,000 square feet.
3,000
Yeah,
square feet.
maybe a little bit less because I'm doing the conversion in my head.
Yeah.
But around that it's a big apartment.
Yeah, and I know this apartment as well because they were clients of Uruguay. Oh, I just touched the microphone. Because they were clients of Uruguay, and it's a superb apartment. Now, they said to me that you had not recommended that area to them. Tell me a bit about that.
It's located in an area that is not as beginner friendly as others. It's not something like horrible, but for someone that just came to the country, it could be something to get accustomed, and that won't maybe happen so much. It's going to happen, but not so much in Pocitos and Punta Carretas.
Right, like Centro is very, like the name says, right?
Yeah.
It's central. It's very
Yeah.
urban. It doesn't feel as residential
Yeah.
as the other areas
Yeah.
are. And I guess like they do have all of the amenities around, just like any neighborhood
Yeah.
in Montevideo always has, you know, like your supermarkets and your pharmacies
Yeah.
and everything like that. But you're probably going to have to walk 10, 15 minutes to get to a nice cafe, for example,
Yeah.
there, right? And I think they do take an Uber back at night.
Yeah, I think that it's
'Cause
not
it's a
even
bit
like
gritty.
15 minutes.
Yeah.
Maybe 10 would be closer to start getting to all the cafes that are in like the south part of the centro,
Yeah,
because they live in like in the northern part of centro.
yeah.
It's something that you should just be smart about.
I agree. And I think that it's, like you said, there are some neighborhoods that for beginners in Uruguay,
Yeah.
they are, which are the ones that you've mentioned more, they are more friendly, more accessible. But once you get to know the neighborhoods then,
Yeah.
and you're looking for more space, you're looking for the fantastic old buildings. I mean, I've got to say, if we could actually start to help there be more revitalization and more like actual movement of people in some of the neighborhoods like Centro, like the old city, where there are so many fantastic buildings and you can get so much more for your buck. But, you know, like there needs to be more people to live there for people to feel in general like more comfortable, right?
Yeah, and there's a big like local fear more of those areas. And a bad
Yeah.
reputation.
The locals are the worst. Well, and I've got to say, people don't love old properties as well. Anything else that you'd like to add about how you work with clients, for example?
Well, I always start having a meeting with them. I never send one listing before having like or a video call or a coffee if they are here in Uruguay, or lunch, to get to know them, to understand them, to see what their concerns are, what their needs are. The first step with any client is to have a meeting with them, to also like see each other's faces. Everything is easier when you know who you're working with. So I know them and they know me.
That's amazing. I've got to say that you came across our radar because a lot of foreigners started to write to us to say, there's this amazing real estate agent, you need to be recommending him. So thanks for doing the work you do. People really feel looked after.
Thank for all my clients that wrote that. I have them all well trained. And thank you for having me.